Hello. How's everybody doing? Welcome back to another episode of this series of the myth of work-life balance. So, just to bring a recap in case you're just listening to this one and you haven't listened to the other ones, I started this series because for as long as I can remember, I've been sharing with my participants, whether it's a workshop or clients in one-on-one sessions, that there is, in my opinion, no work-life balance. There is life, and life has different compartments, different areas that we get to prioritize, and we get to choose what those areas are. We get to identify those areas as we move through life, and those areas can change throughout our life. And therefore, the more people keep trying to bring a balance of work and life, the more they fragment themselves, and the more they start wanting to behave a certain way at home and then behave a different way at work. When in reality, what we are aiming to have is this balance within ourselves, is this clarity of who we are, so that we can stand up for that no matter where we are in life. And when we have that clarity and that solid foundation, it makes it easier for us to move through any type of relationship, which, in my opinion, it's another area of life. The second part of this series was related to communications, boundaries, and truth. And I shared some stories about some situations that I encountered between the first episode of Work Life Balance and the second part, and how I was able to actually see in action the different types of communications that can be had with different people based on, of course, their personality. So my communication style is pretty steady, is pretty solid, and therefore I can say I either have people that really appreciate it or I have people that really dislike it, and that's okay. I'm not here to please people. I'm here to be myself, and I'm here to be honest and true to myself and show up and, as I always say, treat others the way I want to be treated. Therefore, I won't be rude or disrespectful or abusive to people. What tends to happen is most people that I know are wanting to be from the place of, I just want to get along with everyone, even if that means sacrificing their values, sacrificing their communication styles. So, on the second episode, I share some examples of how in my early 20s, I used to basically say, okay, it's all my fault. I'll take responsibility. I'll work on myself. As I got older, I went to the other side of, no, that's not my fault. That's your thing. And if you don't want to work through this, we can go our separate ways. To the point that I started realizing, it started feeling like, I don't think I'm going to have people that are going to want to have these difficult conversations with me. However, as life has it, in the last definitely year, I have met more and more people that are willing and happy to have these difficult conversations and take responsibility for their part of their contribution and listen to my responsibility, or me taking responsibility for my part of the contribution. So that's another example of the importance of having that clarity, those core values, and understanding or adopting this idea of, this is my life and these are the areas in my life. Work, profession, career just happens to be part of it. So on this episode, I'm going to continue the series, and another few factors, another key elements that help me support this vision of we have life is trust and psychological safety. And I talk about this also in my book, No Risk, No Fun, because I'm specifically talking about the work area, the workspace, and the importance of having that trust and psychological safety. And if we think about it, and many of you know because you've listened to my stories before, or you've met me and I've told you my stories before, I am a survivor of domestic violence. And one of the things that I learned through that relationship, through that abusive situation, was the importance of psychological safety, the importance of being heard and being seen and feeling like it was okay for me to speak up. It was okay for me to think what I was thinking. It was okay for me to express myself. And of course, more important than knowing that that was okay, experiencing the opposite of it. So the reason I was able to understand how important that is, psychological safety and trust, is because I experienced the opposite of it. I experienced feeling unsafe, feeling scared. I experienced waking up every day wondering how my day was going to go because it was not a safe place, wondering if what I was thinking was wrong, if what I was thinking was going to create or contribute to an abusive experience or an abusive memory or an abusive trigger. Therefore, my trust levels were low. Trust in myself was really low. There was a point in the relationship where he would say, "You bring out the worst in me. I never act like this. There's something that you do that makes me come out and behave this way." And I actually started believing that. So that led to me not trusting myself. I started doubting my actions. I started doubting my thoughts, my behaviors, my just myself completely. And the reason I am sharing this with you is when we try to separate work and life, it becomes really painful to realize that what I was experiencing at home was definitely going to impact my work because it's all connected, it's all related. And the more I try to separate it, you know, by, for example, waking up in the morning after an abusive um, episode, waking up sore, waking up with bruises, mainly internal, waking up with, with soreness of my arms, my wrists, because there was this focus of work life balance. It became really difficult for me to live life fully because I would wake up thinking, okay, this hurts, but I now have to go to work. It can't hurt. I have to go to work and I have to be my best and I have to get over this. And I would suppress the feelings and I would remember that I had to smile at work. I had to show up with a smile on my face. I had to show up with everything's okay. I'm fine. And the more I would hear people say, you can't bring your, personal life into work, the more it became really painful to even understand where one thing ended and one thing started. Where did my life personally started and where did my work end? Especially when I used to work with the person. And and it was very confusing. In my early 20s, that was one of the most confusing things. So what that did for me was it started impacting me in a painful way, in a negative way. It started feeling like I was not I could not trust myself. I could not be I couldn't be right. My thoughts were not right. My actions therefore were not right. There was always a constant questioning of what am I doing? How do I show up here? What if people can see that I'm not okay? What are they going to think about me? What if they find out and I tell him something and then he gets mad at me? There were so many what ifs. And so not only was I walking at home on what felt like not only eggshells, more like a landmine, I also had to then walk like that at work. And the more I would hear people say the importance of having a life work balance, the importance of keeping one thing separate from the other, the more I became ashamed that I had made a mess of my life because I couldn't understand how to keep them separate. I couldn't understand how I could show up to work and pretend like nothing happened. And what I was doing at the time was I would then go home and pretend like nothing happened and just say it's going to get better. It'll just get better tomorrow. And it didn't get better. It actually got worse. And so when we think about this myth of work life balance, let's consider trust and psychological safety. Let's consider, how do we feel at home? How do we feel at home in our life? Because remember, we're trying to play with this idea that there is life, and life has some compartments or some areas, and one of them happens to be work or profession or career, and the other one happens to be relationships, and the other one happens to be mental health, um, physical health. We can choose those areas, but we're just going to play with those for the time being. And so if we look at life, if we look at our life, if we step out of our life and we look into life from a window, as if we're just watching a scene, how safe do you feel in your home space? And how safe do you feel in your workspace? And how safe do you feel in your friendship space with your friends? When you ask those questions, when you start observing that, it gives you an indication of where are you actually safe, and where are the areas that you're having to sacrifice a part of you, that you're having to show up in a different way just to feel safe, just to survive. So if there's a feeling of burnout, a feeling of stress, a feeling of frustration, a feeling of anger, doing this exercise can actually help you assess which of the areas is the one that's actually impacting you in a negative way that is bleeding into the other areas. And and that's for me a great example of this myth of work-life balance. What we want to find is a balance within our life, within all of the areas that we describe in our life. Psychological safety is a big one. Um, and I feel a lot of people don't reflect on it enough, because in essence, there's no room for feelings or emotions. However, that's shifting and that's changing. I see it more and more because of social media, because of even the way we're showing up on LinkedIn, which is one of the most, professional platforms, or it was considered one of the most professional platforms. And now when I go on there, I see more and more how people are sharing their life experiences. They're sharing the experiences they're having from their home area, the experiences they're having from their work area, the experiences they're having from their family area. And these are all areas, again, from their life. So they're being more open. And that's how some people, or a lot of people, are finding that balance, because they're choosing to show up on these platforms. They're choosing to show up in these spaces completely as they are. And, I observe and I watch and I see how some people, take a hit with some people that leave comments that are pretty harsh or aggressive. And watching how people choose to manage those conversations is amazing. And the way I explain it when I'm watching this is they trust themselves. Within their being, there is psychological safety. And most likely, more than not, is they'll have a partner or a spouse, or they live with a family member that provides additional psychological safety, that says, hey, it's okay. You do you. You post whatever you want to post. You do your thing. I support you. Instead of being criticized, instead of being looked at, instead of being micromanaged, even in life. And if we look at it, if there are unhealthy relationships or unhealthy connections that a person has in a specific area of their life, they will bleed into the other areas like work, and vice versa. So I given the example that if you work in an environment where you're being talked down to, you're being put down, you're being micromanaged, you're being looked at under a microscope, you're being criticized without being supported, which in my opinion, that's like poor leadership whatsoever. One of the worst things I've experienced hands on, and I have seen in team when I do team coaching, is having a leader or a manager that is really good at pointing out what the team members are doing wrong and keep telling them what a failure they are, and not stepping up to say, and this is how I'm going to support you. And this is how I'm going to make sure the rest of the departments can support you, because we are all one. The biggest painful thing I see and I have experienced is having a manager or a leader that is looking at you saying, you're failing, you're failing, you're failing. We expect more from you and we're not going to support you. You're going to have to figure it out, and just leave you there. It's complete lack of trust and complete opposite of psychological safety. It's more of an abusive type of relationship, type of dynamic. And surely, if you are in that workspace, if that is how that area of work, profession, or career is for you, naturally, when you go to your other area of life, relationship with spouse, relationship with children, it impacts you in a negative way. And you said it in another episode, you might actually start being lashing out, or you might start lashing out at your friends or your spouse or even your animals, your pets, because that anger has to go somewhere. And sadly enough, we tend to take it out on the ones that had nothing to do with the problem, because they'll love us so much that they'll put up with it. They love us so much that they'll take it on, because they'll say, I just want to support you. What can I do? It's not my fault. I get that. And so that's an invitation of how not having that trust or that psychological safety in all of your areas will impact even your mental health, even your physical health. So there you go. There you have it. Another example or another area brought into this conversation to start reflecting about adopting this mindset of this vision of bringing balance into your life, as opposed to bringing work-life balance. What if we start adopting this idea that life as a whole is what we have, a gift, an opportunity? And what areas are we choosing to experience and focus on in this beautiful life? And what are the things that matter to us? If we choose that trust and psychological safety is something that's really important to you, to your well-being, to the balance into your life, where or in what areas are these two things out of balance? And the most important question is, what can you do to bring that balance into your life? So there you have it. There's some ideas that I give in the book. One of the things I'm going to start doing is, and I'll let you know when that gets going, I've been advised by one of my coaches to start doing some readings. Read the book and do it on TikTok. So I'm going to try that out and see what that's about. I haven't done that. I'm willing to give it a try. Okay, let's see if it works. Let's see what that feels like. But the reason I'm bringing that up is, in the books that I wrote, From the Ground Up and No Risk, No Fun, I talk about what I just mentioned, these core values, and what happens when these things are out of balance, and what can you do. And there's questions in there that invite you to reflect on your next steps and taking those next steps to support you to bring that balance back into your life. There you go. There you have it. As always, I am happy to read your comments, hear from you. Let's connect. If you want some support on how to bring that balance into your teams or into your personal relationships, whatever area you want to focus on in life, just let me know. I'm here to support you. And feel free to share. Feel free to share the episode with whoever you think might find this useful. With that, I hope you have an amazing rest of your time, and until next time.